Hello, everyone, and welcome to Guys and Their Games, the podcast, and this is episode 4. Before we start today, just a little bit of a note. I know we haven't really been doing this that long, but we are already going to make format changes. We decided that the news section of the show, we were going to cut out as we felt we weren't really that dedicated to it, nor did we have that much to say, as well as news varies from week to week, so some weeks we might have a lot of news, other weeks we would have no news. Also, the fact that it doesn't really work all that well in a podcast, in the sense that the whole point of the news was to inform people, and if they hadn't heard the podcast at the time, then they'd probably miss it, and there's really no point to it at all. So for the time being, we're just going to take out the news and put the time we dedicated into it into the other two sections, and I guess we'll see where we go from there in the future. So getting to our schedule today, first we'll be talking about games we've been playing recently, and our second segment will be the topic of our choice, and this week we decided to make it a little bit more personal. We know we haven't really talked about games that we really like and we hold dear throughout our lives, so we'll each be going around telling our top 5 or so favorite games, why we like them, and how they've held with us throughout the years. So, as per usual, I'm the host, Burke, and today I'm joined by Jaeger.
Yo.
Are you eating Reese's Cups right now during the podcast?
Shh. These are trade secrets.
As well as Will.
Hey, I'm not eating food while we podcast because I'm a professional.
So getting to the first segment of our show, we'll be talking about what we've been playing recently in video games. So since I believe Jaeger hasn't ever gone first, we'll have him go first, and then we will follow it up with Will, and then I will go myself. So, Jaeger, you want to take it away?
Yeah, sure. So recently, I came back to school for 2 weeks, so I haven't really had a lot of time to play stuff for myself, but a couple of my friends and we've been playing some GameCube games just for fun. Like, last night we were playing Mario Party 5 and 7. We were playing Soul Calibur 2, Super Smash Bros. Melee. Me and one of my friends started a file on Wind Waker, so we're playing through that. But in terms of games I've been playing by myself, recently I've been playing through, before I went to school, I was playing through The Evil Within, which is a game I wanted to get around to eventually. I had on my list for a while, so that's been pretty interesting. And I definitely see where some of the mixed reception comes in from it.
So, what is that game and what is it about?
The Evil Within? Well, okay, so I don't want to botch the names, but Mikami, I believe, the man who was the creative director behind Resident Evil 1 and Dino Crisis. Or maybe it wasn't Resident Evil 1, maybe it was the remake, RE remake. But basically, he was a couple of years ago, he was all right, we're bringing survival horror back. We're going to have a big new AAA title that's going to be the next RE4. And so they created The Evil Within. But just recently, I found out that he actually wasn't behind the idea of it being a survival horror. He really wanted it to be a sci-fi-ish type game, kind of like Dead Space. But they kind of, pressured him into doing a survival horror. So it's a survival horror game. Mikami's the lead director. Bethesda put it out. It's an interesting game. It's got a lot of cool things going for it, but there's also a lot of things I would change about it. It's basically like RE4. It's a third-person survival horror action game.
So does it have a clunky control scheme as well?
What do you mean? Like tank controls? No, there's no tank controls.
Yeah, I mean sort of like all the other Resident Evil games.
Yeah, Resident Evil 1 through 3 had tank controls, but 4 changed it. And The Evil Within's way more like RE4. Almost too much so. It borrows a lot from it. But there's a lot of things I do like about it. I'll talk about some positive things. I really like some of the monsters or the enemies' designs. I think some of the levels or some of the chapters as it's split up to are stronger than the other ones. The one thing I really like about it is the addition of you get matches, and there's a mechanic where you can shoot like zombies, or as they're called in this game, the haunted, in the legs, and then they'll like fall over, and then but they still won't be dead because they take a lot of hits. But you can burn them with the matches and kill them instantly. So it's kind of challenging. 'Cause after a while, certain enemies have like helmets or face masks where you can't really headshot them necessarily. So one of the viable ways to take them out, and they never really explicitly tell you to do it, which I think is kind of cool, is to sweep the leg and burn them, and then you can catch people and fire. You can catch other zombies maybe. Let's see what else is cool about it. Some of the bosses look pretty cool, but some of the bosses. But then again, well, there's a lot of good bosses. There's some. I'd say half of the ones aren't that good either. The story's pretty confusing. I don't really know what's going on, but that's kind of, I don't know, it's not that big a deal to me as much as other people, it seems. The main antagonist, Ruvik, is voiced by, oh man, I'm blanking on his name, but he's Rorschach from The Watchmen.
Oh, that's got to be kind of interesting at least.
Yeah, he's got a pretty cool voice. I dig the voice.
Does it sound just like Rorschach?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, the dialogue is like not anything Rorschach would be saying. But basically the premise of the game is you're a detective, and your name's Sebastian Castellanos, I think. I don't know the last name. I don't know if that's how you say it. But basically you're called to this asylum where someone's broken out of and is like murdering people. So you go to investigate it, and then hell just breaks loose and it becomes a giant mind fuck, and I just have no idea what's real, what's not real anymore. Yeah. One annoying thing about the game that you'd notice from right off the bat is like there's letterboxing, which cuts off a lot of the screen.
Yeah, I actually remember hearing about that. This is the one where the letterboxing cuts off like the ceiling and the floor.
Yeah, so you can't see items that you can pick up.
What? That's such a stupid design.
Yeah.
And I heard a lot of complaints about it, that there were sections where you had to use parts of the ceiling, like you had to shoot something on the ceiling, whether it was an enemy or some environmental thing that you needed to use to kill an enemy or something like that. And the letterboxing prevented you from ever seeing like the actual ceiling without looking absolutely directly up, which was like a huge
there's
huge
a couple
issue
of boss
with it.
fights, maybe one or two, where you have to shoot like a vent or something, but sometimes you can't see it, yeah, because the letterboxing gets in the way. If you're playing on PC, unfortunately I was playing on PlayStation, but if you're playing on PC, you can disable the letterboxing.
Oh yeah, I actually remember why they implemented this in the game. It's because for the older, what did you play this on?
PS3.
Okay, yeah, so like PS3 and Xbox 360, I believe it's also for, they had some issues running it, so the letterboxing helped the performance a little, whereas PC, it didn't have any issue at all, so you could just take it off.
Mm-hmm. I noticed a lot of times when I was playing, whenever I was doing like an on-screen kind of like, not a QTE, but like an action, like pumping or like pumping a lever or turning a crank or something, you know how you just gotta like mash X and your character will crank it. The FPS dropped pretty hardcore when I was doing those kind of sections.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure this game was pushing the boundaries of the limitations of what older consoles could do around this time.
Yeah, I don't know. You're probably right. I agree. It is kind of annoying, the letterboxing, but after playing for a couple hours, I guess you get used to it. But yeah, it's got some cool enemies, cool scenery. But there's a lot that's just like kind of borrowed from RE4. But I guess I can't really blame him. I mean, he was the director behind it. You can tell the game was kind of rushed, even though it was like 4 years in development. But yeah, that's pretty much what I've been playing.
You also mentioned that you played some GameCube games as well in there?
Oh yeah, me and my friends were just playing them last night because I was in town. Yeah, we were playing Melee for a little bit. My disc is kind of buggy though, so...
So did you get like the please reinsert the disc screen a lot?
Every loading screen, pretty much, yeah. So
That's
that got
terrible.
annoying. It got annoying after a while. So we switched over to Soul Calibur 2, and I had a lot of fun. I haven't played that in a long time. Yeah, it's definitely still going. I actually really like Soul Calibur. I just like forgot about it. I need to get back into it. So I remember when Soul Calibur 2 first came out, I had like 3 characters. I just sat down and tried to master for like a couple weeks, and that was a lot of fun. Link included. Link is exclusive to the GameCube version. I think Hiyashi, I could have the name wrong, but the old dude from Tekken is the PlayStation exclusive.
Is Master Chief the
And then,
Xbox exclusive?
Spawn? No, yeah, Spawn is the Xbox exclusive. Like, what the fuck?
I guess it makes sense. You can't really have Master Chief sitting in the corner shooting someone with an assault rifle.
No, it could be cool if he had like the beam sword or whatever. Maybe his alternative weapon could be that gravity hammer. 'Cause Link's alternative weapon is the Megaton hammer.
I don't even think that was a weapon in Halo at the time.
Oh, really? When that come out?
I think 2003.
Well, the gravity hammer was you could use it in Halo 3, but it does appear in Halo 2.
Oh, right.
Just as a non-usable weapon.
In the last
what's his
battle.
name? Brutus uses it.
Oh, okay. It could have come out around the same time. I feel like Soul Calibur came out first, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think Soul Calibur came out around like 2002, early 2003 maybe.
When did Halo 2 come out, you said?
I believe 2003, 2004 sometime.
2004. Yeah, so Soul Calibur came out 2 years before that.
Yeah, so I don't really know if the hammer would be a weapon by then. Usable at least.
Yeah, I'm looking here. Soul Calibur 2 came out July 5th, 2002. And then Halo 2 came out November 2004. So quite a while after. A couple years. Hell, when did Halo 1 come out?
Like 2000 maybe?
2000.
Yeah, it was shown at the 99 E3, so yeah, it came out in 2000.
2001, it says. According to the internet. Yeah, it came out for Xbox first, and then it came to PC nearly 2 years later.
Oh, cool. So, what else have you been playing in the GameCube era?
Let's see. You also started Wind Waker again.
Oh, yeah, my sister's actually playing
I know
that
that game
now.
like the back of my hand, though.
I feel like that would be a really good game for the three of us to like let's play since we all know it.
Yeah, it'd be fun. Any like Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, or Wind Waker, those are like my 3 favorites, so any of those 3. Let's see. So yeah, we didn't get that far, but I mean, we were just kind of drinking and playing, and she hadn't really played it before, so it was kind of just fun watching that. What else? We played Mario Party. We played Mario Party 7, and then we attempted to play Mario Party 5.
Without the microphone too, because it's in my basement.
Yeah. No mic games. Then we attempted to play Mario Party 5, but one of my controllers like freaked out, so we just gave up. I watched my friend play Persona 3.
Oh, that's still
for a
like
little
games
bit.
you just have to get around to
Not the
play.
most exciting game to watch.
Yeah, I feel like JRPGs in general
Yeah, it depends.
aren't
but
really that fun to watch, in all honesty.
Yeah, the traditional old school style. I mean, it was kind of cool just because I never played Persona, but it got like kind of boring to watch after an hour or two, especially because she was like following a guide trying to get like all the different combinations of personas, and like so there's a lot of time where she like nothing was actually happening. Yeah, so I don't think I played anything else. See, I think we started to play. I brought over Ari remake, so we started playing that for like 10 minutes, but then we decided to go out, so we stopped. And that game, the disc for me is also pretty buggy for some reason. Like every time I go in like a door, it would like
That sounds
freak out.
absolutely terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much what I've been playing.
Wow, it actually seems like you got around to quite a bit of games.
Yeah, I mean, last night was just kind of like we put in a game for an hour and a half, and then be like, all right, let's play the next one, and kind of have fun. Evil Within was more of what I was just doing before I came back to school, and it was still pretty fun. It amongst like I don't know, it has its problems, and I could see why people wouldn't be disappointed if they were like really looking forward to it, but I liked it.
Nice. So, is there like any game or games that you're looking to kind of go forward and play next?
I don't know, there's a lot of games I'm looking forward to playing that are coming out that I just kind of realized today. I was like, holy shit, there's so many games coming out that I want to play.
Yeah, there's a ton of games coming out in the next couple months that I kind of want to dig into.
Yeah, even like just next year, like there's just so many.
Oh,
Uh,
I haven't really looked at those because I'm too worried about my wallet after these next couple of months.
Oh
uh,
yeah, no, definitely. There's going to be a lot of money spent on video games in the coming months.
oh, I'm really excited about Capcom just announced that they are in fact gonna remake Resident Evil 2. So I'm really excited about that. Yeah, Mario Maker I'm pretty excited for. And I did a lot of reading about Platinum's new game, Scalebound, that's coming out. That looks really cool.
Yeah, I remember hearing a lot about it at the last E3, but I didn't really look into it too much.
Yeah, they put out like an interview or some new facts about it recently. So it looks pretty cool. Some new screenshots too. I'm really looking forward to Dark Souls 3 whenever that comes out. Yeah, The Last Guardian, I actually want to give that a whirl. That looks pretty cool. Yeah, you guys excited about that at all? I don't think any of us really were super hyped for it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really too interested in it, in all honesty.
You don't think it looks interesting?
I mean, it could be. It's made by the people that made Shadow of the Colossus, right? So it could be something along those lines.
It might have started that way. I don't know about it now though.
So yeah, it looks like there's a lot of games coming out recently that we'll all be kind of diving into and excited for. So moving on, Will, what have you been playing recently?
Recently, I have been I've taken a crack at the Simpsons Hit and Run game, which was originally for the PlayStation 2 and the Nintendo GameCube, and possibly the original Xbox as well. And it's a pretty simple game. Most of the Simpsons games are all like some form of spin-off or parody of other popular games. Hit and Run is obviously sort of a take on Grand Theft Auto, and it is so much fun. Like, it's just if you like The Simpsons, which I watched a lot growing up as a kid, it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of little like clever references, like beyond just stuff that like if you have watched The Simpsons a couple times you'll get and you'll laugh at. I mean, there's really, really, really deep references to like really old Simpsons episodes that like, stuff that if you were to actually be able to get because you watched The Simpsons that much, you'd find really hilarious.
I feel like it'd also be enjoyable for people that didn't play it because it's just in general kind of a funny game.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. The Simpsons are funny in general. It's playable whether you love The Simpsons, you've seen a couple episodes, or you've never seen it before. It's funny. And that's not really something that's super common in video games these days, is like actual honest humor being the center of the game. And obviously it's not, it's a spin-off of a current series that's on TV. So it's not really its own video game, it's not its own franchise as a video game series, but it's a lot of fun. There's 10 levels, and it goes from Springfield, and you see all the normal stuff that you remember from seeing in Springfield, to different parts of it and at different times of day, which sounds like a cop-out, but it really isn't when you go back to certain parts. And you play the levels as different characters. So the first level you play as Homer, the second one you play as Marge, the third one you play as Bart, the fourth one you play as Lisa, and then you kind of rotate back and you end up playing as Apu, the guy that owns the Quickie Mart, and you play as, I think that's it actually. That might be all the characters that you play as, but it's a lot of fun, and it's all about like the aliens, the green goobly gobbly aliens, whatever their names are, trying to take over the town, and you've got to run around and stop them. And it's just a lot of fun. They've got this really great system where there's telephone booths all over, and you can go to the telephone booth and you click on it or, hit, I think it's whatever button it is, you activate it, and then you have access to your entire garage, and they'll plop the car down right there in front of you. And obviously, as you go, you can unlock new cars. Every individual character has their own car, of course. Homer drives the pink beat-up convertible. Marge drives the Grand Canaro, which is like a big SUV. And in a really clever way, they gave Lisa a full-sized version of Malibu Stacy Doll's car, which is obviously a joke at Barbie and like the Barbie car and stuff. But she gets to drive like a full-sized one of those. And it's just cool because you can unlock all the cars and have a lot of fun by just playing it. Or if you go really, I mean, there's a lot of depth to it. And for a spin-off series video game, I would say it's honestly one of the best that I think I've ever played because there is a lot of depth to it and you can unlock lots and lots and lots and lots of different cars. You can go to secret areas. You have to use certain cars that are hard to unlock. You know, you meet challenges, do all that sort of stuff to get a car. And then you've got to go use that car in a level, maybe 3 levels back. And they're kind of like open roam areas. They're a lot smaller than what we think of when we think of like a sandbox game. And it's almost like a sandbox video game divided into 10 different like little mini areas, like little small sandbox areas. But it's really cool and it's been a lot of fun, and as you can probably imagine, it's been really nostalgic. I've been all about the nostalgia recently. I think that if you're a fan of The Simpsons, it's definitely worth going and buying, you know, for $5 and sticking it in whatever system that you have it for, and playing it. And if you're not a fan of The Simpsons and never really watched it, it's still a lot of fun. And it's a really good game. It's well made. It's funny. The story is very, very typically Simpsons and totally outlandish. And it's a really good, really, really good game, and a really good game from my childhood that I've been having a lot of fun with getting to play again and getting to look at. So that's what I've been playing.
Sounds like you had a lot of fun with it then.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you played recently?
That is really all I focused my time on. I'm still working on playing. Oh, you know, I've been working on playing Pokemon Sapphire, but I made the absolutely terrible decision of turning on Animal Crossing New Leaf the other day, and dear God, my town was a mess. There was more weeds than there was just actual ground.
Jeez, your poor villagers.
Like, it looked like a jungle. The entire thing looked like a jungle. So I wandered around for a bit thinking, like, what it was that I could do. I was like, okay, well, I could pull up all these weeds, or I could just, you know, I guess, like, if I really want to play this, I can just, that's what I'm going to have to do. And after about 6 weeds, I was really sick of doing it because I'm lazy. And I think I'm just going to delete the whole thing and start over again. That seems like the
Oh my
best.
God.
Have you, like, invested that much time in it already?
Oh, no, not at all. Not nearly far enough for it to be a really serious decision for me to just put the torch to my town and get myself a new one.
Yeah, I mean, in that game, it's really easy to do the first couple of expansions pretty quick. I mean, if you go to the island and just, like, abuse it, you can get, like, 30,000 bells or 300,000 bells in the span of, like, 30 to 45 minutes.
Oh, yeah, we were catching all the fish and the island and stuff. That's right.
Yeah, I was the fish guy, and you were more of, like, the bug guy.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I got mad bugs up in that place. So many bugs. And now there's weeds everywhere. So time to start a new one, I guess.
Yep. Nuke the town, start over.
Yep. Yeah, I'm going to destroy it exactly like Megaton. I'm just going to trigger the undetonated atomic bomb right in the center of town and just build a new one right there.
Nice. So it sounds like you guys have been having a lot of fun with games recently. So I guess I will go next, and I have played a lot of games in the past, like, 2 weeks. I had a lot of time when usually I don't, so I went back and checked off a lot of things off my bucket list. Things like the ones I won't talk about too much in detail are Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes and Gone Home.
Oh, nice.
I wouldn't exactly put it that way.
No? Really?
Nice. No, not even a little bit.
I just felt like it was super boring, and I wasn't really interacting with it at
Oh,
all.
wow.
Now,
I
is
like
that
that
the
game.
one that's inside of the... It's almost like a point and click?
Sort of. It's more of like a grab and throw is how I played it.
Oh.
I just kind of walked around this house grabbing random shit and just flinging it in circles. But yeah, I guess I'll talk about it a little. So you play as a girl that just comes home from school or whatever.
You're coming from college.
Yeah.
College, yeah.
And I read a couple people didn't really like this about the game. I noticed it, but I don't think it's really a good reason to be down on the game. But you get there and it's kind of a scary atmosphere in the sense that it's thundering out, it's night, you walk in, no one's home, all the lights are off, you have no idea where anyone is or what's going on, and It's even done in like the Amnesia engine, so it sort of lends itself to being sort of like it looks like it could be a scary game, but in the end it isn't. Basically what it is you walk through a house that you've never been into before because your family recently moved, and you try and find out where they went off to, and like you kind of uncover this whole story with your sister and what she's been doing the past couple years and what's going through her head and whatnot. And honestly, I wasn't a real big fan of the story at all, so that's probably why I didn't enjoy it so much. I mostly just kind of spent around a time going to things, clicking on them, seeing if I get like an audio journal. If not, go to something else, click on it, rinse and repeat for every room you go into, and it just ended up being like a boring experience for me, and it almost didn't even feel like a game, to be completely honest. It kind of just felt like I was going through the motions in order to kind of progress, and there's like little to no interaction going on through it, so that's pretty much why I didn't enjoy it at all.
Sweet. Did you buy it or?
I actually bought it on Steam during the sale probably a long time ago, so I got it for probably no more than $5,
Nice.
which
nice.
is good because I'm glad I didn't pay like $20 for this game.
Sounds
I
about
doubt I
right.
would have, in all honesty, because I wasn't really that interested in it to begin with. So besides that, I also played Transistor by Supergiant
Oh,
Games.
it's Bastion. Same people.
Yeah, the people that did Bastion, but it's actually like drastically different from Bastion. While it is classified as like an action adventure sort of game, it also adds in a few sort of strategy slash turn-based elements to it, which makes it kind of interesting. So basically, you play as this woman named Red, who is a famous singer, and this group of people, I don't remember their name off the top of my head, they come around and they use something called the Transistor to open this wormhole to like this species of things called the Process, I believe they're called.
Mm-hmm.
And basically the Process comes out into the city and it takes over all the people and like the whole town. Everything's just going haywire at the time. And so I guess what ends up happening is you start off the game, you find this thing called the Transistor, which has the voice of a human inside of it, and that's pretty much the narrator throughout the whole game, sort of how Bastion had like I don't remember his name, the older gentleman that narrated. But it's different in that sense that the person is someone you knew before the game started, so the way he narrates stuff is a little bit more personal, talking about like her past a little bit, and that's the way it unveils a lot of the story. So as opposed to Bastion, where it's kind of the person that know you and he just generally talks about what you did. And in that sense, I liked it a little bit more because it was a little bit more hands-on of how you interacted with the game as opposed to the game sort of lending the story to you throughout the whole time. So I also mentioned before that this was sort of like a strategy slash turn-based game as well as an action adventure where you can run around, you have abilities you can use, you can have like 4 of them at a time, and you can bash people up or whatever in real time, or you can push the space bar and enter something called turn, where everything stops. You can use moves that take up certain amounts of energy throughout the turn, as well as moving takes up energy. And after you're all done with that, you activate it, you do your moves. No one can move during that time, and then afterwards, everyone can move, but you can't use your abilities until your turn comes back up. But you also don't have to use the turn, as I said before. And for certain aspects, you do, like certain bosses and certain enemies, you absolutely have to use it. So it's not really, it's optional at some points, but at other points it's not. The thing that makes this game really cool is the abilities are called functions, and you have the option to, when you receive a function, you can switch it out at any point if you've gone to an energy center or whatever they're called. And with these functions, you can actually combine them together so you have a main function, and underneath those two you can put other functions which add additional effects to the main function. So say you have something called like bounce, where it'll bounce between all the enemies. You can add something called like, one of the abilities is pretty much like a huge shot that fires really quickly. So basically what'll happen is you can add that to the bounce, and the bounce will fire a further distance, and it'll also fire quicker, which is actually pretty cool. And you can also even use these functions as passive. So say there's something called, I think it's dash, I believe. You dash a short distance, but you can apply that to your passives, so it makes it so I believe your turns come up quicker and you have less time in, or you have more time in turn. Sorry. So this adds like kind of a little bit more of a depth to the game or whatever, which is really cool because I kind of like that. But in general, I thought the game was really good. It wasn't, in my eyes, as good as Bastion. I feel like Bastion was kind of like one of those things that really caught me off guard. But in Transistor, the music's fantastic, the art's phenomenal. It takes its time to sort of step away and make you look at like these watercolor-esque drawings that they put into the game, which is really cool and really creative. But yeah, it was a really good game. So if you liked Bastion, you should probably pick up this game or just pick it up in general because you can probably get it on Steam pretty cheap during like a sale or whatever. So yeah. The other sort of game I wanted to talk about after Bastion was a reboot of an old series called King's Quest, which was back in the day a point-and-click adventure done by Sierra Games. And so Sierra came out again, and they did this reboot, and it's actually really interesting. So it's not like a point-and-click adventure. It's just kind of like an adventure where you walk around, you push the space bar and things, you look at it, either you pick it up, or it's like, what do you want to use with this or whatever. And it's pretty much as tough as like old adventure games, honestly. There was a lot of times where I kind of walked around, clicked on something, and it was like told me some stuff. Either I picked it up or I just had no idea what was going on, or I had no idea if I had the thing that I needed for it. So what would happen was I would walk around, be like, all right, do I use this on you?
Classic
No.
adventure game.
How about you? No. Okay, well, clearly I don't have whatever, so I would walk around some more until I find it. And I have to be in like a certain mood to play that sort of game, but I actually really enjoyed this game. So basically, it's told through episodic adventures. First of all, it is sort of a flashback of this bedridden old man named King Graham, and he's telling his, I think, daughter, maybe son, I can't really tell, about his adventures. So the first episode is how he comes across this land and how he becomes like a knight and defeats like all these other great knights and these epic challenges or whatever. And it's kind of a cool story. So since it is a flashback, the way that they can tell it is if you die in the game, he'll say something kind of like quirky, like, oh, clearly that didn't happen. Like very early in the game, there's two levers that you can pull, and if you pull the wrong one, he's like, that's what would have happened if I pulled the left lever, but clearly I didn't since I'm standing here right now, and I really pulled the other lever, and then it'll reset you, and you can go and pull the lever, which is pretty cool. I mean, it's kind of quirky and charmy. I like it a lot. They do that a lot throughout the game, and he constantly like narrates the story in the form of like storytelling while you're actually playing it, which I also do like a lot as well. But yeah, the comedy in it is kind of like hit or miss. It'll have these moments where he'll act like a, I guess, 8-year-old girl, super excited, jumping around, and I don't really like those moments. King's Quest is known for a lot of puns. I'm not a fan of a lot of those. There's a few ones that are kind of, I guess, cute and funny, but not many. But it's just kind of like there's these moments where King Graham just seems like either the biggest kid in the world or whatever. Like very early in the game, there's a moment where you have to tell the guard why you were late to the ceremony, and just one of the options is like, oh, I couldn't leave the house until I finished like these pancakes my mom made me because they're her extra special chocolate pancakes, and she knows that in order to eat them, I can grow up and be a big boy, and she won't let me leave the house until then. And I don't know why, but it kind of caught me off guard, and I thought it was really kind of funny. So yeah, I really enjoyed that game, and unfortunately, it's done in kind of like an episodic fashion where they're gonna put out a new episode like every 2 months, I think they said. There's only the first episode now, and it was only like $10. I'm really glad I bought it. But for the total pack of the next like 4 plus the epilogue, I believe it comes to another 30 on top of the 10. So overall, it's like a $40 game, and it's actually really enjoyable so far. So I would say anyone that's a fan of those adventure games should go out and get it. And I guess the last game I wanted to talk about that I've played and have been playing for a really long time now is another episodic sort of game called Final Fantasy IV: The After Years. So I played this back on the WiiWare when it first came out, and originally it was done in like the original style Final Fantasy IV graphics. So when they brought it to the PC on Steam, which is where I played it, they upgraded the graphics to like what the DS looked like. So it looked a little bit cooler with everything in 3D-ish, but like I said, it's done in episodic fashion, and unfortunately, it's like the game's main downfall. You start off in sort of like a tutorial playing as the child of the last Final Fantasy IV. The main character of that was Cecil. You play in this one. You play as his child Theodore, who's kind of he's pretty cool character in all honesty. So basically, you kind of go through the motions with him, and you find out that things are kind of going out of hand, and people are stealing the crystals again, and a second moon is showing up, like what happened in Final Fantasy IV, and everything's just going crazy. Your dad is acting super strange, and you have to run away from Baron, which is your hometown. So that story is pretty cool, and then some of the other stories are kind of interesting, but there's just some that aren't really like. Did either of you guys play Final Fantasy IV?
Final Fantasy IV? Yeah. Those are like the only one. I've only played 4 and 6.
Yeah, so like I like that game a lot, and there's some characters that I don't really like Edward. I mean, I don't not like him. It's just I don't like playing as a bard, but unfortunately he gets a story, and it's really boring to the point where you're pretty much running around. He can't really do that much damage, and he's accompanied by 3 guards. So this is like the only time I put on auto battle. And basically what I did was I would have him play his bard song. I don't remember what the ability's called, but most of the time it'll heal you, and I had just the 3 guards just attack with their basic attack since that's all they know. And basically what would happen was the autoplay would just continuously do that. Pretty much I'd be at full health every time because I'd be playing this bard song, which doesn't cost MP, so I can constantly do it. The guards are just constantly attacking until the enemy's dead. So gameplay-wise, it was super boring. Story-wise, it added like a little bit in the sense that like there's a meteorite that crashed outside your town, and they kind of go into that for like 10 minutes, and then you kind of go through a lot of the same story that happened in the previous game. So basically you go through this area called the underground waterways, and once you get to the other side of that, there's a desert called like Kaipo or something. There's a city there called Kaipo is what I meant. And you find out one of your people in your team has come down with something called the desert illness or desert disease or something. So you have to go back through the cave, which is already a pain in the ass already. But this time you only go as Edward, which makes it even more of a pain in the ass because he does like 10 damage to enemies that have like 150, 200 health, and it's just an absolute pain. So after you do that, you get the sand pearl, you come back, she's healed, and then you continue on with your quest, and the ending part's actually pretty cool. But just his episode just didn't need to be a thing. In all honesty, I feel like they just did it to money grab in sort of a way, unfortunately. But some of the other episodes are like super good. One of the downfalls of all of them is they kind of have this idea that they need to fluff up the game a little. So what they'll do is they'll send you in a dungeon. You get to the end of the dungeon. They're like, all right, now you got to go back through and get to the entrance of the dungeons. So you do all that, and that stuff's not really fun, but I almost actually did quit after Edward's part because I was just so frustrated with the game. It just leads you to this area, and then it's like go back through it again, and that's just not fun at all. But thankfully, I stuck with it. I played Edge's story next, which is actually really cool and really interesting. It added 4 new characters, as well as like a whole sub story and a bunch of new places, which unfortunately did need to go back and forth like to the end and then back to the beginning again, which kind of sucked. But yeah, I mean, it adds some new characters. Very rarely it'll add some new plot, but generally it's very similar to the first one. But yeah, if it wasn't done episodically, I feel like it would actually be a really good game. So I unfortunately don't really know how to feel about it right now. I'm still playing through it. I played through about 6 of the 8 first characters you need to play through. So there's like Theodore, uh, Porum, Palum, uh, Edward, Edge, Yang, and Rydia are the first characters you need to play through, and then afterwards you can play through Kane, Cecil, and the end story, which I think all the characters join together. You get all the gil that all the people have gathered throughout their experiences, as well as like their levels and their items. So I'm actually kind of excited to play that. Hopefully it works in sort of the way that you can pick who you want on your team, and that would actually be really cool because there's a ton of characters in the game so far. So yeah, hopefully that will be more of a positive experience in some of the areas I've played through recently. But yeah, so I've kind of sort of been talking at you guys a lot, just at you.
Yeah, well, I would comment more, but I don't really know anything about King's Quest, or the thing I knew the most about was probably Transistor, but I've never actually played through it. Oh, and Gone Home. I just know a lot about it, but I've never actually played it. But I want to.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's one of those games where you can just kind of like watch it on YouTube and get like the whole experience on it.
I don't know. I feel like it's not a game where like that's like what your objective should be. From what I gather, you want to explore the house to find out the story on your own, not just to reach the next checkpoint or whatever. Yeah, it's about exploring the house because you don't really know anything about it.
Yeah, it seems like sort of a stepping stone idea that could develop into something even greater. And I guess they've gone out and said that they are going to work on a new game, so it should be interesting to see what they do with kind of the storytelling mechanics in that.
That'd be cool. I feel like that's kind of like well, at least from what I've seen about it, it seems like a really good way to tell a story in a game that doesn't borrow too much from like movies.
All right, well, I think that'll be enough to wrap it up for this segment on games we've been playing the past 2 weeks. As you could probably tell, we had a lot of games, and it might be a little overwhelming, but we hope you enjoyed, and we will see you in the next segment where we will talk about some of our favorite games throughout our lives and give you guys a little bit more of a taste of what makes us us and our just general taste in video games. All right, guys, see you after the break. Welcome to the trivia section of the show. And the question of the day is, reoccurring Final Fantasy boss Gilgamesh makes a guest appearance in Final Fantasy IV The After Years. Which Final Fantasy character's name does he say upon defeat? Is it A. Rydia, B. Bartz, C. Cecil, or D. Vaughn? Find out in just a little bit. If you guessed B, Bartz, then you are correct. This is indeed a reference to Final Fantasy V, which is the first game that Gilgamesh appeared in. Enjoy the rest of the show, guys.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to section 2 of our podcast here. Today we're going to be talking about our favorite games and just get a little bit more personal into our experiences with gaming and just kind of talk about games that just are a cut above the rest in our opinion. So, Burke, we're going to start with you. We're going to do a top 5. We're going to go around, say our 5, say 4, say 3. So, Burke, why don't you kick us off?
Well, okay, so for my number 5 game, if you guys will allow it, I will pick Wind Waker and Metal Gear Solid 3. I almost said 5. It's not out yet.
Alright.
But Wind Waker, a drastically different Zelda, and it was all about adventuring, and I just really like kind of open world games where you can just pretty much do whatever. And Wind Waker, for the most part, like the second half of that game, you can literally go wherever you want and do whatever you want, and it was just like the first like really expressive Link in any Zelda game, just in general. And Metal Gear Solid 3, Metal Gear Solid's my favorite stealth series, and the third one, there's just so many interesting things sprinkled into it, like Easter eggs, like where if you set the time ahead an hour, it'll kill one of the main bosses in the game because he's like super old.
Brilliance.
I know, right? If you go into the main menu, you see Snake's health and like all of the areas that are affected, and you spin him around 20 times and you exit out of that menu, you'll see Snake throw up because he got dizzy. There's just like a bunch of little things in that game on top of just the ridiculousness of like having Raiden's mask as a thing, or blackface lab coat Snake.
It's got a huge dong too.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Have you
Possibly.
seen the new gameplay video from Metal Gear Solid 5 where Snake's riding on his horse and he gets in the middle of like a road and it has the horse take a shit on the road. He goes and hides. A Jeep comes up on the road and like slips on the shit, and he sneaks up to the back of the Jeep.
That's genius.
Puts on like the weird like parachute pack from Peace Walker, and it just bumps the car into the sky. It's like, what the fuck is going on in Metal Gear?
Will, what do you think your number 5 favorite game is?
Well, I don't think what my number 5 game
What do
is.
you know?
I know what my number 5 game is.
Some of us can't make up their mind, apparently.
It would be Sonic Adventures for the Sega Dreamcast. It's one of the most revolutionary games. It's incredibly well translated. There are no glitches at all. It's pretty much a flawless game. That's why it comes in at number 5 for me. No, just kidding. It's all nostalgia. A lot of that game is pretty bad. There's a lot of crappy parts.
Yeah.
The first thing that I can think of every time I think of that game is the scene, yes, You Big Drip, is when Tails crashes the plane right before the first stage,
that's actually
and
one of my
Sonic
favorites.
does that mouth thing where he's like,
Tails, look out! Ah!
Yeah, no, one of my favfavorites. But no,
that
was a shrug. That was an air shrug, everyone.
Sonic does. It's
so good.
You're all envisioning it. No, that is really one of my favorite games. It was like the first like console game that I had. It was the only console game I had for a couple weeks after my parents bought me a Dreamcast. I played the hell out of it. I know that game inside and out, and I know that there's problems with the game overall, but I don't care because I played it when I was a little kid. It was one of the first things that I remember in video gaming. I remember sitting down, not even in a chair, just sitting in front of my what seemed like the biggest TV in the world, like sitting right on the ground in front of it, staring at it, playing it. And I had to like plug my Dreamcast on the front of the TV. All nostalgia really on that one, but one of my favorites, that's for sure. So that's why that one's my number 5, because it definitely makes the list, but I can't possibly put it above any of the other games on my list because that would just be wrong.
Does the GameCube version like compete with it?
You know, are you talking about Sonic, like the DX, like the director's cut?
Yeah.
I have it, but I didn't really like play it all that much, I guess.
Oddly enough, after the Dreamcast version, every other iteration of it, like a remake of it, is like glitchier and
that's
more
what I heard,
unstable.
too.
I did not know that at all.
The Dreamcast is actually the Dreamcast version's the go-to version.
I bet that scares you deep down.
DX is fine. It's like playable, but watching some people play like the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, like HD ports of it,
I have
like
both of
some of
those,
them
actually.
are game-breaking bugs in there.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems.
PS3?
No, the Xbox 360. I have both of the
okay.
arcade versions of
Gotcha.
Sonic Adventures and Sonic Adventures Battle 2, and I guess I haven't really played Sonic Adventures 1 on it, but I know that Battle 2 is like, there's a lot of bad stuff in there. But anyway, moving on. All right, Jaeger, so do you want to kick us off with your number 5?
Yeah, okay, yeah. I think I've thought of an order this time, so
Wow, that's
let's go
great.
for it.
1886.
Okay, so my number 5. What'd you say?
I don't know. Something about the order, and I said 1886 or whatever that game was called.
1776.
Yeah, that's my favorite game.
It ain't accurate.
The
of
one
all
that
time.
bombed like shit.
It's not even out yet.
Yeah, it was. It
Oh,
came out
is
a couple months ago for the PS4. I got like 50s across the board.
Oh
Oh,
shit!
wow.
I thought those were just like
The
preliminary
PS4 only has 2
reviews.
exclusives, Bloodborne and The Order, whatever.
Bloodborne's like mad. Good.
Yeah.
So I've heard.
The Order I heard just bombed. Anyways, Jaeger, what is your number 5 favorite?
All right, so my number 5 favorite's gonna be Paper Mario: Thousand Year Door for GameCube.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
That is a good one.
it's a heavy mix of nostalgia and it's just a great game.
Paper.
I like it better than all the other Paper Marios, and it's my favorite out of the Mario RPG series, all of them.
Yeah, I think I prefer the Paper Marios to... I've only played one Mario... Well, technically I played 2. I played Mario RPG 7 gold rings, whatever it's called.
5
Super
golden
Mario
rings.
RPG.
Yeah. 7 stars.
Yeah,
or
7
something.
stars. Yeah.
Wow, a bunch of professionals who did their research, huh?
I didn't enjoy that one as much. And I played Bowser's Thousand Year Door, and I
That's
still
not
think...
it. Bowser's Inside
shit.
Story.
I'm sorry, I'm so tired. Bowser's Inside Story,
Yeah.
and I think
That
I
one's
like
really good.
Paper Mario 1 and 2 better than that. I still haven't played Superstar Saga. I own it, but I have to
Superstar
get
Saga
around
is
to it sometime.
definitely, well, in my opinion, I think it's the best out of the Mario
Yeah.
Luigi
I've
games.
never
that's what I
played
heard.
Thousand Year Door, but I have vivid and distinct memories of watching you, Burke, play Thousand Year Door on your old, like, the really old RCA TV that you used to have. Or maybe
Oh,
you still
in the
have.
other room?
In the other,
Yeah.
in the other room, because we're in a basement.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I remember watching you play that all the time.
Yo.
And I would say that, like,
Yo.
my favorite Mario RPG to watch
You
is
remember-
Thousand Year Door.
Yeah, I was gonna say my favorite memory was definitely when we brought the GameCube over to your house and we were playing it with Nate, and he kept resetting the game because we got the
Yeah.
wrong colored Yoshi.
Yeah.
He reset the game like 4 times.
Yeah, he was pretty upset.
He was, and then he didn't get a cool color in the end.
No.
So anyways,
Bert, do you
My
wanna
number
tell us
4.
your number 4.
I'm going to give it over to Kid Icarus Uprising on the 3DS. And I know a lot of people say it has like bad control handling, but honestly, I never saw it. I don't know if it was because I
never
played it.
felt it.
I never did. I don't know
No,
if
he
it was...
plays with a blindfold.
Yeah. I don't know if it was because it was for the... I had the regular 3DS, so I haven't played on it with the 3DS XL yet, so I don't know if it's a little bit more difficult to hold. But I just never felt like it had control issues.
I mean, it looks really good for an early 3DS game, and just the music is phenomenal, as with like every other entry on my list here.
I feel like it's a really good reboot for a series that literally had nothing going for it besides being hard as shit.
Yeah, I mean that's always nice when they take, you know, an old IP, a franchise that hasn't had a lot done with it in a while, and like it's always like, and it's unearthed and done really well by people who love the series. I feel like that's super, super important.
Yeah, but pretty much that game is what I wanted Star Fox Assault to be so badly, and it wasn't. It had like memorable characters, funny conversations, a few touching moments here and there, great gameplay, both in air and on ground, believe it or not.
Star Fox Assault did not have really great.
It had
on-ground.
okay air missions and garbage ground missions.
Garbage.
I mean,
Yeah, no, like weeks old trash.
Yeah, that is kind of what I wanted the next Star Fox
oh,
to kind of be
I
like.
know. And it has so many things in it. It's got a super customizable weapon tree. It's got a really cool online player. It's got the ability to set your difficulty and rewards you aptly for performing at like each difficulty well. So I just think it's a great game in general, and I still play it a lot to this day.
Sweet.
So Will, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is James Bond Nightfire for the Nintendo GameCube. And my love of
Nice.
first-person shooters starts with that game. And a lot of people immediately think James Bond GoldenEye, that was like the original one. That's what everybody played. But I think, at least in my opinion, you look at it today, it's pretty much unplayable.
It's
It
really
looks
bad.
terrible.
I
The
actually
controls
did
are
try
terrible.
to play it a couple
And
months
that's
ago.
fine, not saying anything bad about that game, but a lot of the things that I ended up playing, I feel like I have a slightly shifted perspective on games that people look at and think are classics. I look at the games that I played and they seem to be like the ones right after that, or like the ones that were like right before, something like that. So, and I think that's another example of it with James Bond Nightfire. I mean, it was on the GameCube with one of the best controllers ever made, and it was fluid, and there was tons of weapons, and oh god, the multiplayer with the bots, the adjustable, you could make them like you could change so many things about them, like their personalities, the way that they played, their health, their respawn time. It was just so much fun. So much fun. I played that game for hours and hours and days even. And even the main story was really, really cool. I mean, I was and still am like a giant James Bond fan, and the story, getting to watch a real feeling James Bond story unfold with all the like classic James Bondy stuff. Pierce Brosnan did all the voice acting for James Bond, and then getting to like in between the cutscenes that were basically this James Bond movie, get to play as James Bond was exactly what I could have ever possibly wanted. So that game, for a lot of nostalgia, and also because it really was an honestly really well made, solidly thought out, fleshed out game, and honestly, I could turn that on right now and play it still to this day.
It's actually really funny because you said your fond memories over at my house were playing Paper Mario, or watching me play Thousand Year Door, but my fond memories over at your house were as Oddjob trying to tomahawk my hat across what's that snow level called?
You're talking about the tall one or the
one that had the two houses that were on different
gondola's
planes?
Sky Rail. It's the
Sky
first
Rail,
one.
yeah.
Yeah, we would stand on
That's the
opposite
best
houses
level.
as Oddjob and just huck the hats at each
Yeah.
other and try and jump out of the way.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Or either that or the first level where you have to
Snipe
the
the
sniper
tires.
rifle. Yeah, it's
yeah.
a pretty good one.
Really,
too.
really
I
good
have some
game.
nostalgia for that game too.
Absolutely.
Great.
Jaeger, why don't you give us your number 4?
Pokemon Red and Blue, Game Boy Color.
Why not yellow?
Sure, lump yellow in there. I like that one too. It's probably, I don't know. I don't really like all the weird like tie-in show stuff they had, like making you have Pikachu at the start. 'Cause
Yeah, but
that's
you get all the
really annoying.
starters.
Yeah, that part's cool. I guess Jesse and James was kind of
That's really
neat
cool
to
too.
throw in
Yeah.
there. But yeah, Red and Blue, it was my first handheld game. And I'd rented it multiple times before I'd actually owned it, back when you
From
could
the
rent
local
games from
Blockbuster.
Blockbuster.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I remember the
R.I.P.
first time I ever booted up the game, it was some guy's profile, because he didn't erase it or
And
anything.
he had 6 level 35 grammar.
No, he was like in Lavender Town with a level 50 Nidoking, and I was like, is this how you play Pokemon? I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, I remember, like, I was so bad at video games. Like, I didn't know, like, it was just an inherent thing, like, to know, when you start the game, to just go talk to Professor Oak. I wandered around in Pallet Town for an hour, just not knowing what to do, because I was a complete idiot. That's where I
Just
fell in
like
love.
walking into trees.
Yeah, I was really bad. That's like when I first fell in love with Charmander. He's my favorite Pokemon. With that whole family.
Probably because as soon as you saw him after wandering around for an hour, you were like, "Oh my
This
god,
is
a
the coolest
Pokemon!"
thing ever.
Oh,
Yeah. So yeah, Pokemon
it's like when you're
Red and
really
Blue.
hungry and you finally get food. It tastes so much better.
Exactly.
Fun
It's
fact
a heavy
about-
fact of
oh,
like
shit.
it's a heavy thing of like nostalgia. It's actually a good game, and the community, I guess, with it. Like you just
Yeah.
talk about it with your friends every day at school.
Because
and-
everyone's heard of it.
Yeah.
Everyone's played
Yeah,
it.
everyone
eventually.
as a child played Pokemon.
Yeah, well, especially in our age group.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone in our age group played
It
Pokemon.
wasn't my fault.
Uh-oh. Now we're opening a different can of worms here.
Fun fact about Pokemon Red and Blue: not only did I receive my first copy from a Japanese man,
Oh my
but that
god.
same Japanese man also taught me how to play.
Oh my god, your stories are... That's the best Pokemon story I've ever heard.
Yeah, how do I not know that?
That's why Lapras is one of my favorite Pokemons, because it was the first Pokemon he taught me how to use.
Oh my god.
You
I've never
mean
heard
you
this story.
actually talked to the real life version of the dude in Viridian City who was passed out and shows you how to get a Pokemon?
Pretty much, yeah.
That's incredible, and why didn't I know that?
Did you get him coffee later?
You know, in
We
the
skipped
original
that part.
Japanese version, he was actually passed out drunk.
Yeah.
Obviously, they translated that because that wouldn't.
We don't
fly
know
here
what
in
drunk
America.
is over here in America.
They
Exactly.
translated it. Getting drunk in Japan is the equivalent to just having coffee.
Needing coffee. Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the joke, was that, like, he was super hungover.
I'm
Yeah,
surprised
that's why
they didn't
There was a
change
lot
it.
of censorship
I'm
like that.
shocked they didn't change it to jelly donuts.
Oh, God, don't start me on that.
Yeah, that's bad.
All right, moving on. For my number 3,
I'm gonna have to say Star Fox 64.
I'll allow it.
I know it was sore.
Andross's enemy.
You said Star
It's
Fox
my
Assault
enemy.
wrong.
I meant
I
Adventures.
considered putting that on my list, actually.
Star Fox 64. I play it
Star
so
Fox Adventures
freaking
is my number
often.
1.
So with
I
Star
wanna allow
Fox
it.
64, it's so short you could play it, and there's so many different ways to play it, being all the branching path lines. And on top of that, it was like one of the first Nintendo games that they did voice acting, and for some reason they aren't doing voice acting in many of their other games.
Oh, and how did they kill that voice acting in Star Fox 64?
It was so beautiful in the worst possible way.
What's
And by
amazing
that, I mean,
is
it was
the
so bad in the
censorship
best
that we were-
possible way.
The censorship we were just speaking of about how he was passed out drunk and then they changed it to coffee. How on earth the line "Your carcass is mine" slipped through in Star Fox 64 and was translated into English?
Well, you see, the people that were fixing the translation for Pokemon were actually passed out drunk, and no one got them their coffee. So
That makes a lot of sense.
yeah, but just exactly, it comes down to like the character interactions. They're just
Fun
golden.
gameplay.
Everyone knows them. Yeah.
Yeah.
The gameplay in general, with the past game I had and this one, for some reason I just have like a love for third person over the shoulder shooters. I've never been a fan of like shoot 'em ups or anything, but for some reason those games are just golden to me. And on top of that, even though the multiplayer is kind of garbage now, at the time it was pretty good
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
compared to everything else on the N64.
Remember, like, the first time I ever played that game was at, like, one of those N64 startup stations they had at, like, hotel lobbies.
Yeah, I remember playing it.
I
at
played
one
with
of
a couple
those, too.
kids, like, before I went to Disney World earlier.
And it was one of the first implementations of Rumble. I actually have a
Oh,
Rumble
cool.
pack
I didn't
because
know
I
that.
got it with the game, yeah.
Alright, Will, so what's your number 3?
My number 3 is Pokemon. Of course, that's going to be on the list, but mine is Ruby and Sapphire. And as the course of this podcast, I don't know if we talked about this, but to kind of give everybody some backstory, there's definitely a little bit of dissent between Burke and I on
Hatred. No, I'm just kidding.
Wow.
I was just kidding.
on the best Pokemon versions. He
Burke's literally snapping in half
Believes-
a cartridge of Ruby.
I literally have
right
an
now.
axe in my hand right now.
he believes that it's gold and silver, whereas I know that it's Ruby Sapphire.
And we have a third
Ooh.
contender now.
Yeah,
Red and blue.
Red and Blue is my favorite.
Yeah, this is quite an interesting dynamic we have here. But
Gen 1, bitch.
since we're on my number 3
OG,
right now,
original gen.
Straight out of Pallet Town.
since we're on my number 3, we're going to talk about Pokemon Ruby Sapphire and how I think that it's my favorite it's my favorite generation of the Pokemon series. I mean, I really,
What about
really
Emerald?
love the starters. Yeah, why not? I mean,
Yeah, the
I can
Battle
throw
Frontier
that
was
in
really
there,
That's
cool.
what
yeah.
I'm here for, asking the big questions.
yeah, Emerald is pretty cool,
The
but I mean,
nitpicky questions.
when I say Ruby Sapphire, I really honestly focus specifically on Sapphire because that's what I played the most, and I had both.
Kyogre and everything.
Oh yeah, Kyogre. That's what's up. No, just everything about it, the gameplay, the way that it looked, the secret bases. Oh, so cool. So cool.
The abilities.
Yeah, all the different
Oh, that was
abilities that they had
Yeah.
that added in there. And I even, as lame as it is, I even kind of like the Pokemon contests, even though
I did too back in the day.
Oh yeah, no, they were really stupid, but I had a lot of fun with them when they were there. And I thought that the story was just dumb enough that it was funny, and like just Japanese enough that it like didn't seem unrealistic. Because I mean,
It's Pokemon.
it's Pokemon. Yeah,
It's
exactly.
pretty unrealistic.
But yeah, I mean, Ruby Sapphire. I love all of the Pokemon versions, but that hands down is my favorite. Absolutely number 1, and is definitely a solid number 3 on my list.
Sweet.
Jaeger, on to you.
Alright, my number 3, I was going to put a Zelda in here, and I think it's really hard to, pinpoint your favorite Zelda game. For years, it's, for me...
No, it's not.
It really is. It's always like toss-up for me between Ocarina, Wind Waker, and Majora's Mask.
Oh, and Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
It's my favorite Zelda.
Cloud's my
The
favorite
Legend
Link.
of Cloud Strife.
He's my favorite Link, I think.
It's my favorite Link skin.
Yeah. But I think, if I had to pick one to, if I was on an island and I had to play it over and over again, I would go with Majora's Mask, which I'm sure there's an overlap there, 'cause, yeah.
There's going to be a lot of overlaps here, I believe.
Yeah.
Shit, I didn't think there was gonna be this many.
I'll dissent.
It's funny because Majora's Mask was a game I played as a kid and I didn't like it. It didn't click with me at all. I really disliked the pressure of having like a timer. But when I went back and I played it when the GameCube collection came out, I fell in love with it. Like completely. I realized a lot of the things that made me fall in love with the Wind Waker, like all the charm to it and the character interactions, a lot of it was derived from Majora's Mask, and that's kind of where I think the charm of the Zelda series and like the weirdness of it kind of was cemented into the series.
With Tingle.
It-
The sole character.
Oh yeah, Tingle, hands down, one of the best characters. He's even better in Wind Waker, in my opinion.
That's true.
I love how
He's
he has
got his
this
whole
like
band.
Yeah, he has
of
like a
people.
family that is
It's like Tingle, Knuckle, Tingle Jr. Or no, not. It's
he makes them slave away on an island while
It's
he's
not even an island. It's literally a tower.
It's a totem
in the
of his
middle.
head in the middle of the ocean. Like it's
They
great.
probably had to build it, like the pyramids of Giza.
Mhm.
I wouldn't be surprised.
He probably whipped them with
Yeah.
a Tingle tuner.
But back to Majora's, like even like as I've grown up, like you've kind of there's like a bunch of like theory videos about how the 5 different levels of the game or whatever represent like the 5 stages of grief, and it's just cool that now that we're older, you can like kind of dissect like the older games and see maybe there's a lot of hidden meaning behind some of the things that might have went over your head. As a
Yeah,
kid.
absolutely. I mean, games that you can play and are accessible and have fun with
Mhm.
as a child and not actually have to read into all that, but then when you go back, you play them again, they're still great. You get all that awesome nostalgia, but there's so much more to dive into.
And it's one of the weirdest Zelda games too. It's one of the least formulaic.
I mean, probably the weirdest.
Yeah.
It was the first one Anuma worked on, and he's like kind of known for changing up the Zelda formula a little.
I really appreciate that. I love it when a recognized like franchise branches out and tries something completely left field and it works out. I think Majora's Mask is, if not the best example of that, one of the best examples of that.
So we're gonna see adventures later on in your list, then, right?
Number 1. Bad guy.
Star Fox Adventures.
Where are we
God.
going?
My mom needs white grub tubs.
The best thing about Star Fox Adventures that we
That was
realized...
an uncanny impersonation of Tricky.
Practice.
I wasn't looking at
years
you and
of
I thought he was
practice
here in
over
the room.
Years of mocking.
Yeah.
No, but
Bad
me and Bird
guys.
realized a couple months ago that Tricky actually made his debut in Diddy Kong Racing.
It's true.
Before he
really?
was
Yeah.
in
It was
64.
a completely different design, but he was Tricky the dinosaur, and it cited him as being like that Tricky.
Well, not to get completely off topic, but it doesn't really matter because we're probably going to cut all this anyway. However, I do know, and you guys probably do too, is the Dinosaur Planet was the original version of the game, and it was made for the N64.
I don't think we need to cut that. That's relevant.
Well, now that we've said it.
I'll
And
just
yeah, it
cut
was
that.
just originally
Not
put
relevant.
in as it was going to be this Dinosaur Planet game, and then for whatever reason,
Then
Miyamoto was
showed up.
wandering around and was like, "Hey, Ray, are you trying to throw Star Fox into
into
this?
there,
I don't
yeah.
know, crystal with some blue furry."
How do I get in there?
All right. So, Burke, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is my favorite JRPG, Xenoblade Chronicles.
I'm feeling it.
I'm feeling it.
I'm backslashing. But it's so weird. I feel like Xenoblade Chronicles is like one of those games that everyone knows about, but like next to no one's played. Because not only is it like super long and it was super expensive when it came out.
Mm-hmm. Everyone knows about it now because of Smash.
Well, yeah, Smash. There's a lot of things I heard in like topics and stuff when Smash first came out, and they're like, "Who the fuck is Shulk?"
Exactly.
Do you want
I
to
remember
explain
watching
to me
like,
what you mean as in expensive? Like, was
When
it
it-
just
okay,
released
so-
in Japan?
So, Xenoblade Chronicles, I'll give a little bit of backstory, was one of the games that came over in something called Operation Rainfall, which a bunch of people petitioned to pull 3 games over. Those games were from Japan to America. Those games were Xenoblade Chronicles, Pandora's Tower, and The Last Story. I actually own all 3 of those, but Xenoblade Chronicles is by far the best. And so, Nintendo, in their like haste to just throw it over here, pretty much took the European version, just here you go, America, have it.
That's why they all have
That's why
British
they're all
accents.
British. All 3 games are all British accents. And basically, GameStop got on their hands on it because it was a GameStop exclusive, and they're like, well, you see, if we open this case and then we like close it again, it's technically used, so we can sell it for $90. Here you go, guys. So GameStop was selling it for $90 very shortly after release.
So
Thankfully, I got it before they started doing that.
before they started, okay, how did I not know this happened? They were like opening them and then
They would take the plastic off, open it, and be like, okay, it's used. $90.
Okay, and at some point you're gonna have to do that voice again because that was awesome.
That's
That's exactly the voice of the people of GameStop.
every person. It's on the same.
It's like people of Walmart, but way worse.
But yeah, I actually ended
Wow,
up getting
how
it.
did I not know that?
Yeah, they believe it or not, GameStop likes to keep it on the down low.
Oh yeah, I wonder why.
But I bought it before that happened, so I actually ended up getting it for like $40. It's literally right there.
Do you see, audience? It's literally right there.
Yeah, look over to your left or right, or just keep looking for
Just
it.
look to your
screen.
right. No, a little back. You know what? Yeah, it's right there.
So, it's a really long JRPG, but honestly, out of any JRPG, I think it has one of the best characters, best interactions. It has so much stuff to do. It's been called the offline MMO just because there's so many different quests you can do.
Yeah.
There's like hundreds upon hundreds of quests. The game's super
That's
deep.
what it felt like when I played it.
Yeah. The game's like
MMO.
really deep in terms of mechanics. It's considered like an action RPG in the sense that you have a bunch of different arts. So in that sense, it's not just like me going through menus and clicking stuff that's like weak against the person. It's like me trying to use like certain arts on the side or area of a boss that affects it more. So
As for someone who
it's also
has
got
never really played any of those
really
games,
cool
like
story.
a person that you gave Chrono Trigger to play for the first time in his life just a couple days ago,
Uh-huh.
would you say that Xenoblade Chronicles is a game that you could jump into if that genre wasn't your forte, or something maybe you should play something like Chrono Trigger and then go into?
I was actually thinking about this the other day. I feel like the reason Chrono Trigger is super popular because as a JRPG, it's actually really short. Like it takes you like 10 to 15 hours to go through the main story. And even though there are multiple endings and people that love that stuff can just go through and do it all, people that don't like JRPGs can just go through it in 10, 15 hours and be like, okay, this game is sweet. I'm done with it. So, whereas Xenoblade Chronicles, literally,
It's really
if you do
long.
just the story, it's like 40 to 50 hours.
It's massive.
It's really long. The story is really great, especially like towards the end, and it's just fantastic. That's why they put
Sweet.
Shulk in Smash.
High praise.
I do like playing a Shulk.
High
do
praise
too.
indeed.
So, Will, you're number 2.
My number 2 is Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, because you guys are all morons and Wind Waker is the best. No, I mean, I think that's one of the coolest things about the Zelda series is everybody can really have their own favorite. You can have your own opinion on it.
But
And-
everyone else's is wrong. Just kidding.
I like
But-
series like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
me
one of
too.
those
There's a couple I can
series.
think
There
of.
definitely are a handful, but it's one of those ones that can have such a diverse sort of opinions on and so many different favorites. And it's another one that I feel like the people who really love Zelda, which is all of the people sitting in this room, it's not one of those things where if you like this and I like that, like, you know, you're going to get into an argument about it. The series is just so cool and so expansive that you can just have, if you really love Zelda, you can have a conversation with someone who loves the same ones that you love, someone who hates the one that's your favorite, like any of that. And I think that's why it's so cool. And Wind Waker was, again, kind of like James Bond Nightfire, kind of like a lot of my video games growing up. Wasn't the one that everybody remembers as the classic, like people think Ocarina, Majora's. And Wind Waker now is a favorite, but as we all probably remember, or at
They went
least
through the
know,
Zelda series, starting with Majora's.
um,
They all just kind of went through this period of people liked them. A couple months later, people
Yeah.
hated them. A couple years later, people loved them.
yeah, and Wind Waker caught a lot of flack, especially because of the 2000 or 2001 E3 with the demo that actually looked like what Twilight Princess ended up becoming, and then they came out with Wind Waker, and there was a lot of people that were really upset about it. And I think one of the best ways to describe my experience with the game is that it was like right as I was really starting to get into like not just like playing video games that I bought at the store when I was shopping with my parents, like me paying attention and like learning about them and following the news. It was right before that. So and again, I hadn't played Ocarina of Time and I hadn't played Majora's Mask because I didn't have an N64. So I had zero expectations for it. I had no idea what it was going to be like. I didn't know what was before it. I just got it because I had gotten the GameCube and I was like, all right, let's go. And I played it and I loved it and I still love it and I'm playing it through it again right now. And what you said earlier about it, you kind of covered a lot of the reasons that I loved it. It's just so expansive. And you said something about Link being expressive.
It's by far the most expressive
And
Link.
that is, I think, one of the reasons I bonded with it so much because it's not a story of Link growing up into an adult the way that Ocarina has. It's more of a story of like this kid in this. I've always liked the dynamic between little tiny little Link and that giant ocean.
Mhm.
And yet you do so much and you save so many people and you go on this huge epic quest, but at the beginning and in the middle and at the end, you're this tiny little kid in this gigantic vast sea, which I always thought was a really cool setting for it because it made you always feel like it just gave you that vibe that like everything was bigger than you and everything was nearly insurmountable. And there was a lot of it, but that setting alone built up a lot of the game for me, I think, when I was playing it. And I still kind of had that childlike wonder when I was playing it. So yeah, my second favorite game, and I think it's the game that when I am physically playing it, I say to myself, this is my favorite video game ever made. The rest of the time I do have another one that is my favorite, but it is really just so close to my heart.
It's just the Tingle Tuner, right?
It has nothing to do with Tingle, and don't ruin this for me.
The Tingle Tuner is awesome!
Don't ruin this for me, Burke! No, I do. That game's so close to my heart, and I love it.
That was also like the first time Link had an actual relationship with a family for more than like 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's very true.
And they pretty much like nailed it with both members of his family.
Nailed it to the wall. Outset Island.
Yeah,
we could go on for days. I could go on for days. But we won't do that. So yeah,
I've been keeping mine relatively short in comparison. I don't really mind. But my number 2, it was definitely going to be a Mega Man game, but trying to narrow down my favorite was really tough. But I think if I had to think of just the one game I'd pop in over and over, just a quick start up and play and have
Mega
a blast
Man
every
8.
time. Yeah. Doctor.
Good call.
Yeah,
Those
snowboard
FMV
levels.
cutscenes, man.
Those snowboard levels. Ooh,
Ooh.
It's the highlight of the series.
Yeah, I'd agree. So my number 2 is Mega Man X. 100%. There's just so much that can be said about that game. Such a drastic change from what people knew of classic Mega Man at the time. I love all the redesigns. I love every single level. I love it's kind of like what you're talking about with Zelda. You start out with basically nothing. You start out in the first level. You're just getting your handling. And then you get to the first boss and you can't beat him at all. And you get crushed and destroyed. And as you progress through the game and you get more armor, you get better at the game. By the end of the game, you look physically like you're super overpowered and you can take on anything. And you even get a one-hit kill move. And you can just go back to when you have to refight all 6 of the bosses again. You can just one-shot them and be like, yes, I'm a badass. And it just makes you feel really good. It's a game I can pick up, kind of like what you're saying about Star Fox, that you can just like pop it in and play through it real quick and have a great time. And Mega Man's always been that for me. And it's also been pretty inspiring in a lot of some of the creative work I do with like graphic design and designing characters. I think Mega Man and Zelda are probably my two of my favorite video game universes. It was just like the cartoon I never had as a kid, really.
So when you say inspiring, do you just mean you're slapping Wily's mustache on everything?
That was so well said. And
I'm
you had
sorry.
to ruin it with a Wily joke.
That's Wario!
That's not even the same thing. You're not even in the right series.
Whatever.
Can you imagine that
Jaeger,
crossover?
that was so nice.
Can you imagine that crossover?
That was pretty deep.
Oh, I want to talk about Wily and Wario now.
Why?
Because
Oh god.
No, yeah, Mega Man's definitely, it's, also, I'm coming back to a lot of what you guys said before, because I think it applies to everyone's favorite games, where it's like, there's, especially with a long-running series, there's so many Mega Man games that everyone has their own specific favorite for specific reasons. And I've heard a lot of people say, yeah, X1's cool, but, X3 is my favorite, or X4 is my favorite because of this. And, yeah, Mega Man X, it's awesome.
So Jaeger has to leave a little bit earlier than the rest of us, so we'll just snake back around and go the opposite way for the last round.
So, Jaeger, what is your number 1 all-time favorite game?
Alright, my number 1 all-time favorite game is Super Smash Bros. Melee. For so many reasons, it's probably the game I've played the most in my whole life. And it's one of those games, every game on my list really, but this one more than others, where I just have the heaviest nostalgia for any game ever. It was the first fighting game, if you could really call the Smash Brothers series a fighting game, that I fell completely in love with, and I played way too much of. And you guys can attest to this. We've played a lot of Melee.
Yeah.
And even before high school, and I met you guys, and we started playing Melee every weekend. When I first got it, I played with my brothers.
Every day.
Yeah, every day. Even before that, I played it every day with my brother Chase and my middle school, my elementary school friends, my neighbors. It's just something about all these Nintendo characters, all my favorite characters from like video games coming together
And just
and
such
just
a
beating the shit out of each other. And having a collection of all these stages from all the different games, all the characters, all the music. It's when I hear the startup music for Melee and I see that opening FMV, like with them, all the characters doing that cool shit, it's like, this is the best. Like, that was when you see Samus tuck and roll and shoot a missile at Ridley, and you're like, why isn't this a game? I want to do this. Yeah.
yeah, no, that game.
Where's Ridley?
I'm glad that you said that, because that is, for us as friends, definitely one of like the games that the game I would associate closest with all of us, I think.
It's the game nearest and dearest.
And
to me.
you said that we used to play that all the time, which we did, and we played that a lot in high school, all the time. But a funny story is when Jaeger and I roomed together at Potsdam, we went over to this kid's room and there was a bunch of people there, and Jaeger and I were pretty intoxicated. And some kid mentioned something about Melee that he like wanted to play, and like was like talking about how good he was and stuff. And Jaeger and I were like, oh yeah, we haven't played Melee in forever. Yeah, why not? So like we went back, and I remember the kid was talking about how he was like really good and it was all casual and funny. And Jaeger and I kicked his ass so hard, and we were borderline blackout drunk. You might have actually been blackout drunk.
I don't remember.
Like you were brown out drunk.
I remember not feeling so well later that night, but I remember it wasn't even close. Like we two-stalked him.
No, and he wasn't even like some casual. He was stone cold sober and was good. And we were like,
nah, I don't want to say that I'm really good, because compared to the pros, I'm not even close.
Yeah, but that's like, I mean, if you're pretty good at golf, but you're like, I'm not good because I'm not as good as Tiger Woods.
If there was a fighting game I had to sit down and like try to pick
Fight
up for like
your
a competition,
actual life with,
it would definitely be Melee.
Oh yeah,
100%.
Easily.
It's just so close to me. And yeah, when I hear the startup music, I get super nostalgic.
The start button noise.
When I hear the announcer, Super Smash Brothers Melee, it's like, yes,
so good.
Let's do it.
I remember playing 99 stock in my basement with you, Will, on
DK Falls,
DK
Falls, yep,
whatever it's called.
Yeah, we powered through that. So many good memories.
Interesting.
That's a great.
So that's my
one.
top 5, and unfortunately, I have to leave. So if you don't hear me for the rest of the podcast, it's because I have some matters to attend to.
And he
but
doesn't give a shit
enjoy
about
Will
us.
and Burke and Kaylee. She's gonna jump in for me.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we wrap this up and get to our absolute number 1 favorite games, we have a guest today. Her name is Kaylee. She has played a lot of video games in her life, and she is just going to give us a guest number 1 favorite game. So why don't you take it away?
Okay, well, my favorite game is probably Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. And I grew up with Ocarina.
I thought she was going to say Ocarina of Time. I would have lost
no, well, I grew up with Ocarina of
Yeah.
Time. And, like, I knew all of the things because I had 2 older siblings and I watched them play it. And so, like, when William plays it and he's doing something wrong, I can tell him exactly. Like, I know everything about it at this point. So when I got Majora's Mask for my birthday, the year it came out, it was something new, and like I had to figure it all out as I went myself, and that was really cool. And I'm just a really big fan of like the darker stories in it too. So, I mean, I assume you're going to say things about it as well.
My number 1 favorite is also Majora's Mask. So I did play Ocarina of Time when I was young, and I played Majora's Mask shortly after, probably a year after. But for some reason, Majora's Mask always just stuck with me. I know a lot of people say they had like trouble with the 3-day system, but I never really remember struggling with that. But it was just one of those games where I could just pop it in, play it for a little while, figure out something to do, and then reset the cycle. And I think it was because I just didn't have that many games originally. Like I had Ocarina of Time, Star Fox 64, and Majora's Mask, so I had like less to play. So I did have more time with just that game. But aside from that, it's really one of those Zelda games that's interesting in the sense that, yes, it is like a really short game, but it's like one of the only Zelda games that has like a million side quests. And on top of that, it has the darker story. It like built on the Ocarina of Time characters somewhat. Like it's the same character design, but their actual personalities. They actually have personalities in the first place.
That's what I wanted to say. Knowing Ocarina of Time and the fact that everything in Majora's Mask was recognizable but so different was something I also really liked about it.
Yeah. Whereas Ocarina of Time, there's like 3 or 4 characters with personalities. But they have personalities, they all have touching stories. You really learn all about everyone throughout your like multiple 3-day cycles, and that's really cool to me.
And I just feel like it's one of those games that is like easily relatable to for a lot of people, just because there's such a vast amount of emotion and conflict throughout the whole 10 to 15 to 20 hour playthrough of the game, that pretty much anyone can be like, oh yeah, I've had that happen to me, or oh yeah, I've struggled with something like that, that kind of connects with you on a further level.
And just all of it in general is just so good.
Everything.
I play it like that, and my top 3, Majora's Mask, Xenoblade Chronicles, and Star Fox, I play it all at least like once a year.
Yeah,
So.
I do that. What was I gonna say? Oh, the 3-day cycle thing. I don't really remember that being a problem either. And I think one of the things about it was you could like just start again if something got messed up.
Yeah.
So I think it helped me more than trying to like go back and figure out what I did wrong and like fix all the steps. I could just quit and start again.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to say. Knowing Ocarina of Time and the fact that everything in Majora's Mask was recognizable but so different was something I also really liked about it.
Yeah. So, Will, what's your number 1 favorite?
My number 1 favorite video game of all time is Fallout 3. Everybody probably already picked up on that, seeing as I've been talking about it a lot recently, the Fallout series. But I seem to have this experience a lot with games. And the Fallout series, not so much, because, I mean, I think that you look at, like, Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask compared to Wind Waker, if you consider those, like, 1, 2, and then 3, those were, like, you know, you guys just said, Majora's and Ocarinas are, like, Ocarinas, you know, they're classic. I think if you look at Fallout 1 and Fallout 2 compared to Fallout 3, I mean, the time gap between them is huge, the actual release date time gap. They're completely different games, completely different ways to play, and I think that this seems to be a trend of mine, is that I come in on like the second or third of the series, and that's the one that I have the first experience with of the franchise, and that's where I like really formed all my memories for the games. But I think I look at Fallout 3 as a game that I personally, like I said about Wind Waker, I had no expectations, and I don't think that really a whole lot of people did either, because when Bethesda announced that they had purchased the Fallout series and they were going to be making, you know, basically making a third game in a series that hadn't had a release in almost 10 years, nobody really knew what to expect. Me, the least so, because I had seen no gameplay trailers. I had no idea. When I got Wind Waker, I knew that it was Legend of Zelda. When I got Fallout, I had no idea what it was at all. I didn't know anything about the games before it. I had no idea what I was in for. And this sounds so weird, but just the loneliness of the game and the isolation of your character is referred to as the lone wanderer. And the game feels barren, and you feel isolated, and you feel lonely. And, you know, when you're trekking across the Capital Wasteland, and, you know, you see enemies I always thought were spaced out so well that it wasn't like enemies were everywhere all the time, but there was enough to keep you interested. But it felt as if, you know, there was real distances to be traveled in that game. And yes, there was fast travel, but, you know, when you first started out, you didn't know where anything was. I mean, I had no idea where anything was. And I think people talk about video games giving you a sense of exploration and a sense of, like, adventure. And I think that that's why that game was so powerful for me playing it, was because it felt as if, like, it felt like a real adventure. Like, I was on a real adventure. My suspension of disbelief for that game was, like, astronomical. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that, you know, I don't have any brothers or sisters, and I didn't really have, like, a whole lot of people to play with when I was growing up. I mean, obviously I had friends, but I didn't, you know, when I was home, I didn't have that sort of stuff. So I think that that's why I've always loved video games, and specifically why Fallout 3 just kind of, like, I bonded with it so much, and the character that you make, because he was just such, like, a, you know, kind of a lone wanderer. Yeah, exactly, blank slate. And I think that is the main reason why I love that game so much and why it's my favorite. And then, of course, I can go into all of that. I mean, the gameplay's so awesome. The different locations are so unique and diverse, and there's so many things in that game. Like, probably too many things. Getting all the weapons, getting all of the different weapons, getting the unique weapon, getting, you know, certain kinds of armor, all of the references to lots of stuff that you like, you know, like from pop culture. I mean, I think there was just so much in that game and not to diminish it knowing what it is now, because it's still amazing, but I think one of the reasons that I love that game so much is because I had no idea what I was in for. And when I played it, it like literally was overwhelming because I was like, oh my God, like
There's so much to do.
there's so much, there's so many things. And I think that was kind of the game that made me realize, that turned me from a boy to a man when it comes to video games. It wasn't just like, oh, I like playing Smash Bros. And I like doing this. I like Pokemon. Like, not saying that those are for kids, but that I played that game and I really felt like after I finished playing that game for the first time, I felt, wow, like video games are important to me, and not in a, I like playing video games as a hobby. Like, they are important in my life. That was a really philosophical answer about my favorite video game of all time, which should be a really lighthearted and happy kind of thing. But yeah, that is definitely my favorite video game ever, and still is, and probably still will be. I can't imagine that at this point, even if other games that are better, even if Fallout 4 is a better game, that it's going to be able to knock it off the top spot because of the time in when I played Fallout 3.
And I mean, like, with people thinking about their favorite games, sometimes they do get, like, super in-depth. Like, I know I do every once in a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
People ask me why I like it, because that happens a lot.
All right, well, that about wraps up our show for the day. Before we go, I just want to give a special thanks to Will and Jaeger. I know they had a tight schedule, and we had a little bit of technical difficulties with recording one of the segments, so we had to redo it. And they put in the time and the effort to kind of meet up again and redo it. And I know they missed out on a few things, so I just want to say thank you very much for coming back and allowing us to record this together. So if you guys liked what you heard here, be sure to listen again when we do episode 5, as well as like our Facebook and follow us on Twitter, and hopefully we'll see you for the next one. See you guys.
So which way are we going?
The
Burke?
same way we've been going.
Forgot.
The whole time.
Burke, what's your number 4 or 3? I don't remember.
Which one?
Why don't you do that again?
What's your number 4? Is that what we're on?
Why don't you do that again with no upward inflection at the end?
And the right number.
Burke, why don't you tell us your number 4?
And we're at 3.
But see, I was confident about it.
The musical excerpt used in this episode was Rydia's theme from Final Fantasy IV for the DS, copyright Square Enix 2007.